Welcome back to Opposite Outcomes. I'm Noelia, and on this podcast, we talk about how work actually gets done at mission-driven organizations. Today, we're kicking off a three-part series called Land the Message, and it's all about nonprofit communication strategy. We won't just be talking about sending emails. Instead, we're going to talk about how to reach the right people, move them to action, and how to stop wasting time on communications that just disappear into the void. Over these 3 episodes, we're going to go from the foundation all the way to covering how you can structure your operations and your systems. And if you're listening to this at the launch, all 3 episodes are already in your feed, so you can listen to the whole series right now. So let's get started here. The first real question we need to ask ourselves is, who are you actually talking to? Here's something I see all the time working with nonprofit leaders and operations teams. They're communicating constantly. Emails go out, social posts get scheduled. There's never a shortage of output. But when I ask them, who are they trying to reach? Who is this message really going out to? They simply tell me our community, which is true. That feels like the obvious thing, right? We're talking to everyone in the community. They send one newsletter that they think is supposed to land with everyone, from their major donors to their program participants to their board members and community partners. They all get the same message. And I get it. You're stretched thin. Communication teams are small. It's usually just 1 or 2 people. And that message just needs to get out. But here's the problem. When you talk to everyone, you're actually reaching no one. I recently got an email from an organization, a newsletter from an organization that really is doing valuable, important work in their field. But unfortunately, it felt like there were 10 different messages in that single newsletter. On top of that, every section felt like an ask. I was being asked for input. I was being asked for feedback. I was being asked for a donation, ideas. It went on and on. As I scrolled through the newsletter, I struggled to understand how I could support their mission. What was most important? How could I actually get involved? Over time and under pressure, our strategy and intention behind our communications can get lost. And we need to sometimes make time to take a step back and reset. So let's do that. Let's start with the who. The first thing I want to do is something that I picked up from the campaign world. And this is the idea of putting together a profile. Now, we're going to talk about this a lot more from the lens of political campaigns in episode 2. But for right now, I want to talk about it in a foundational sense. Now, this doesn't have to be a formal document. Really, all you have to do is just have a clear picture of the person that you want to talk to in your head. Give them a name if it helps. Think about where they live. Think about what they do, what they care about, what they worry about. What do they already know about your organization? And also, what do they not know yet? Let's talk about a common example we're all likely familiar with, the end of the year annual campaign. Now, an annual campaign has a variety of different segments that maybe you haven't thought about yet. You've got your recurring donors, so folks that have been there for you, they give to you each year. Then you likely have an audience in your community that is folks who haven't given to the organization yet, and you'd like to encourage them to. Those folks are a different audience segment altogether. And you might also have donors that have given to you in the past, but haven't in recent years. And so you'd like to find a way to encourage them to come back and become donors again. If you think about it, those are 3 different segments that you need to find a way to engage. And the problem is that we often treat them all the same, but in reality, they all really need to be spoken with differently. The message is different to each of them. Perhaps your recurring donors, you're telling them about the great things that you've done this year and all of the stuff that you're going to be doing next year that they likely will want to engage in. It's more about getting them and keeping them excited and active in the organization rather than trying to convince them to donate. Those are your yes people. They're there with you the whole way. They know what you're doing. They love what you're doing, and they're going to support you no matter what. Then there's the folks that are new donors. Maybe they're new to your newsletter list. Maybe they're new just to your environment as a whole. And those are the folks that you need to do a little bit of convincing. Maybe they aren't familiar with what the mission is truly behind your organization. Maybe they're only familiar with it on a surface level. And so you have to go deep with them. You got to really tell them about what you've done in the past and show them that their dollars are really going to make a difference. Then there's that third group. the folks that have given to you in the past but aren't keeping up with their donations in recent years. Those folks, we want to re-engage them. We want to show them all the great things that we're doing now, and also show them that we really cared and loved that they were connected with the organization in the past. It's a little bit of reminding them that they are important to the organization and we care about their engagement, and then also creating a path for them to get re-engaged. Maybe there's something unique that you can bring them in on and ask them for their input and feedback on. Make them feel important and help them see that their dollars matter and their engagement matters. And so, as you see, all three different groups need a different message. And so, if we don't know who we're talking to and we don't understand what's important to them, then it's really tough to shape those messages. And we end up creating one that is very bland and covers all the bases, but in actuality, it ends up not making anyone feel inspired to take action. Most organizations need to put a little bit more effort into segmenting their audience, but I know it's not a fun thing to do. Often it's seen like just extra work that actually doesn't have any impact. But I assure you, if you make the time to create these segments over time, you'll see the value and you'll get better at talking to the people that really make a difference in your organization. Okay, once you know who you're talking to, the next thing you have to figure out is whether or not you're actually talking to the right people in the first place. There's a phrase that comes up a lot in campaign strategy, and I find it applies a lot here also in nonprofit communications as well. The idea of preaching to the choir. You've heard of it, but here's what it actually looks like in practice. When you look at your email open rates, your social engagement, your event attendance, there are people that are always showing up, that are always clicking, that are always responding. Those are your yes people. They already believe in your mission and they already get what you do. And it feels really great communicating with them because, of course, they're responding, they're engaging, they're making you feel like your message is working. But if your goal is growth, new donors, new community members, new advocates, then maybe those yes people aren't exactly the ones that you're trying to reach. Keep in mind that there is a segment of your audience that are the new folks, the people that maybe just got introduced to your world. They likely care about the issues because somehow they landed on your website or they ended up on your socials. And so now we have to figure out how to really engage them with your programs. And so what I like to recommend here is putting together a really strong welcome sequence. A welcome sequence doesn't have to be complicated. It can be simply 1 to 3 different email messages that somebody gets when they sign up for your newsletter. You start off by telling them all the great things that you do. You highlight maybe a few case studies that you might have or success stories. Maybe you point them to some great media that you have. Maybe there's a video or there's an interview that you recently did. You want to show them the things that are most important, but then also get them excited about the work that you do. And highlighting that for them in a welcome sequence makes it easier for them to find. Often someone's going to sign up for a newsletter and kind of not know what the next step is. And so you really want to guide them down that path. You can also then provide some real value. So not only share your story and share your successes, but also show them what they can do next. What is something that they can get engaged in or something that they can learn from that they can take and run with in their own lives? So you want to think about that also. What is in it for them? What are they most interested in? So a really valuable thing that you can also include in this welcome sequence is a little mini survey. You can ask them about what they're interested in. You can ask them what drew them to your organization in the first place. That's going to give you some really great insights into how you could then continue the conversation with them and point them to the right things that are going to make them really love what you do and stay engaged. Something else that is really powerful for organizations to implement outside of a welcome sequence is the idea of purging their list. Now, this one is a tough one because most of the organizations that I work with really appreciate and love everyone that is on their newsletter list. But the reality is that periodically it's important to go on there and take people off, let people go. And you want to let the people go that are not engaged. So the folks who have not opened your email in some time, maybe these folks have never donated to your organization or attended an event. These folks on your newsletter list actually can be detrimental. They make it look like your newsletter or your emails aren't engaging because they're not opening. They're not looking at anything that you're sending them. And it almost ends up being bad for the people who do want to be on the list. It's better to have a small list of engaged people than it is to have a big list with no engagement. That's the thing that we want to keep in mind. So it's a combination of all of this together. We don't want to always be preaching to the choir, even though it feels really great to have that strong, connected community with us. But there's also the group of folks that just found us, and we don't want to ignore them. So we want to create a really great way for them to be able to engage with that welcome sequence. And then being comfortable and understanding that the process of letting folks go is just something that we need to do to ensure that our email list stays engaged. Before you write your next email or send out that newsletter, stop for a second and think about who exactly it's going to. Remember that this is just one person. Really think about it from their perspective and look at it from their eyes. Are you using the language that they would use? That sometimes is a challenge, and we tend to use internal language that works for the organization, but not from the perspective of the individual. So read through the language. Does it make sense for them? Would these be words that they use? Are you actually answering the questions that they would have? If you're not sure yet who your person is, that's your homework for episode 3. We're going to be talking about building systems around your communications, and none of it works unless you know who it is you're talking to first. That's it for episode 1 of our series on nonprofit communications. We're starting here because everything else in your communication strategy depends on this, knowing who you're actually trying to reach and making sure that you're not just talking to the people who are already in your corner. In episode 2, I'm bringing in Melina Duarte, a campaign and communications expert who takes everything we just talked about and shows you what it looks like in practice through the lens of political campaigns. It's such a good conversation and so timely for 2026 since it's a midterms year. All 3 episodes of our Land the Message series are in your feed, and you can dive into episode 2 right now. Thanks for spending time with me today. If you want to keep the conversation going, you can find me on LinkedIn. And if you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app, and subscribe there. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a comment with your thoughts. Share it with a colleague who might be in a similar spot. And please consider leaving us a rating and review. That helps other nonprofit leaders find the show. Thanks again. See you next time.